People like you are only meant to take orders. Understood?" The manager's sharp words cut through the factory's relentless noise ringing in her ears. A black woman named Amara was using all her strength to steady a stack of sliding steel sheets from a machine. The air inside the factory was a thick cocktail of the clang of iron, the painful screech of machinery, and the pungent smell of sweat from the workers. But the loudest sound of all was the voice of the manager, who sat perched on his modest office chair, believing himself to be a god. Amara labored all day, bending over like a cog in front of the relentless machines. But her skin color, her face, and her silence were a constant source of mockery for others. Today the manager had decided to humiliate her in front of all the workers. "Amara, your salary will be cut by 20% this month. Your work is too slow, and dead weight like you is just a burden here." He slammed a file on the table in anger. Inside the factory, everyone stopped. Every eye was on Amara. Some faces held smirks of ridicule. Others held pity for the poor woman. But Amara said nothing. She just kept her lips sealed, not letting a single word escape. Her heart was breaking. She thought, when will this daily cycle of humiliation end? Just because of my color and my poverty? Will I have to live like a walking corpse? The manager began to insult her further. "Everyone, look here. This is a prime example. There's a difference in color and a difference in hard work. Even if this woman works here for 100 years, she won't be worth more than a single nut or bolt of this factory." Tears welled up in Amara's eyes, but she did not let them fall. A fire burned in her heart, a secret that no one else knew. She steadied her heart and offered a faint smile. That smile was only going to infuriate the manager more. "You're laughing? You think you have the right to answer me back?" The manager stepped closer to her. The workers were silent. No one said a word. Everyone thought what was happening to Amara was wrong, but who had the courage to stand up to the manager? For the first time, Amara felt that an insult is the sharpest arrow of all. That arrow was piercing deep inside her. But from a corner of her heart, a voice echoed again and again. "Everything will happen in its own time. Just have a little more patience." That night, the factory lights went out. The workers left for their homes, and the manager drove away in his car. But Amara stayed. She walked through the factory's dark corridors to an old, forgotten room. She took out a key and unlocked the door. Inside, she pulled a file from an old cupboard. That file contained the factory's true legal papers, the ownership contract. And on that contract, it was written, "Registered owner Amara Johnson." The echo of the manager's words, "You people are only good for taking orders," clung to the grimy factory air long after the shift had ended. For Amara, the walk home was a blur of fading streetlights and simmering humiliation. Each step carried the weight of the stolen 20% from her paycheck, a penalty for a slowness that existed only in the manager's prejudiced mind. She didn't go to a cramped apartment in the projects as her co-workers assumed. Instead, she turned a corner and walked several blocks until the industrial decay gave way to manicured lawns and silent, spacious homes. She used a key to enter a modest but beautiful house, a sanctuary that stood in stark contrast to the dust and noise of her daily life. Inside, the silence was a balm. She leaned against the heavy door, closing her eyes. The image of the manager's smug, contemptuous face flashed before her. The public shaming. The way her colleagues had looked away, too powerless or too indifferent to intervene. A single hot tear finally escaped, tracing a clean path through the grime on her cheek. The pain was real, a sharp, personal sting that her grand secret couldn't fully shield her from. Her grandfather's portrait hung in the hallway, his eyes wise and kind. He had built Johnson Manufacturing from the ground up, a legacy of calloused hands and relentless integrity. He had bequeathed it all to her, his brightest protege, with one solemn condition. Learn it from the ground up, Amara. Not from a corner office, but from the factory floor. Know the metal, the machines, and most importantly, the people. Only then will you be its true steward. She had taken his wish to heart. For 3 long years, she had been learning. She had endured the insults, the microaggressions, the blatant racism, all for a higher purpose. But today had crossed a line. This wasn't just about her. It was about the systemic rot festering under her own roof in her company. The next morning, she was back at her station before the first whistle blew. The manager, Mr. Henderson, made a point of circling her like a vulture. "Don't think your silence yesterday earned you any points, Johnson," he sneered, not even bothering to look her in the eye as he inspected her machine. "I expect double the output today to make up for your—" inefficiency, or next time, the cut will be 50%. Understood? A young new hire named Liam, who worked the press next to hers, glanced over with sympathetic eyes. "You okay?" he mouthed silently. Amara just gave a tight, almost imperceptible nod. She couldn't afford friendships. Not yet. Any connection could risk her cover. The day dragged on, a symphony of clanging metal and simmering fury. During her lunch break, alone on a stack of pallets, she pulled out her simple flip phone, a device no one would suspect. Hidden within its generic interface was a secure messaging app. She typed a quick, encrypted message to the only person who knew her true identity, the company's elderly, fiercely loyal lawyer, Mr. Abernathy. Status update operational. Henderson escalated. Financial penalties now in play. Monitor payroll. Await further instruction. The reply was almost instantaneous. Understood. Patience. The picture becomes clearer with every strike. AA. As she slipped the phone back into her pocket, she saw Henderson laughing with his cronies, pointing in her direction. They all chuckled. She was the punchline to a joke she refused to hear. Patience. The lawyer's word echoed her own mantra, but a new, fiercer thought was beginning to take root, nurtured by the fresh insult. The public salary cut wasn't just an injustice, it was a documented crime, and she was collecting evidence. The whistle blew, signaling the end of the break. As she rose, her hand brushed against the cold factory wall. My wall, she thought. My machines, my company. The humiliation still burned, but it was now being forged in the fire of her resolve into something harder, sharper. The lesson on the factory floor was almost complete. Soon, it would be time for a very different lesson to begin, and she would be the one teaching it.
The factory floor thundered with the morning clatter of machines. Sparks flew from welding torches, and the air smelled of molten steel and sweat. Workers shouted over the noise, carrying heavy sheets of iron, while the manager walked across the floor like a self-proclaimed king inspecting his kingdom. His sharp shoes clicked against the concrete as he spotted Amara by the corner machine. She was bent over, lifting a heavy load alone. He smirked, the kind of smirk meant to belittle, not amuse. "Stop! Everyone, stop working!" The manager's voice boomed, amplified by his arrogance. The machines were shut off one by one. The grinding and clanging faded until there was only silence, broken by the dripping of oil and the hiss of cooling pipes. Dozens of workers turned, their eyes landing on Amara. The manager pointed at her. "This one. Look at her. She dares to smile at me yesterday, as if she matters, as if she has a right to stand tall here." Snickers echoed around the room. A few workers looked away in guilt, but none spoke up. From today onward, her work will double, the manager barked. And her salary? Cut in half. Let her learn where she belongs. Amara froze. Her stomach twisted, but she kept her face calm. "Sir, I already—" she began softly. But before she could finish, the manager stomped over and shoved her shoulder. The heavy steel sheet in her arm slipped and crashed to the floor with a deafening clang. The sound rang in everyone's ears like an alarm. "Pick it up," the manager shouted, towering over her. "That's where you belong, on the ground, crawling, struggling, not smiling, not daring to meet my eyes." The humiliation burned her skin. She bent down, her hands trembling as she tried to lift the jagged metal. It was heavier than it looked, and her blistered palms screamed in pain. No one moved to help her. Some workers crossed their arms, pretending not to see. Others exchanged uneasy glances. A few even smirked, too afraid of the manager to show sympathy. Amara bit her lip. The taste of iron filled her mouth as her teeth pressed hard. Tears stung her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Slowly, painfully, she lifted the sheet and set it upright again. The manager leaned close, his voice dripping with venom. "Remember this, Amara. You will never rise above me. You are nothing. You will always be nothing." He turned sharply and walked away, barking orders at others as though nothing had happened. But in Amara's heart, something had shifted. The pain was real, yes. The humiliation was sharp, yes. But beneath the sting, there was fire. As she stood, wiping her brow, she whispered under her breath, "Today he throws me to the ground. Tomorrow I will throw him from his throne." The day dragged on. Every task felt heavier than usual. Every laugh behind her back was another knife. But Amara kept working, her movements slow yet steady. She endured because endurance was her weapon. When the factory finally closed that night and the last worker left, Amara stayed behind again. The manager had gone, his car tires screeching as he sped off. She walked to the back room, her footsteps echoing in the emptiness. With her key, she opened the cabinet once more and pulled out the ownership papers. She held them against her chest, her heart pounding. "No more silence," she whispered to the shadows. "No more chains." The paper rustled in her hands, fragile but powerful. The silent crown no one knew she wore. And though the factory was dark and cold, Amara felt something alive stirring in the air. Her time was coming. The manager's office was nothing grand, but he treated it like a palace. A cheap leather chair, a desk piled with papers, and a single window overlooking the factory floor. Yet when he sat there, he believed himself a king. That evening, as workers dragged themselves home, the manager stayed behind. His tie was loose, his sleeves rolled up. He poured himself a glass of whiskey and leaned over a stack of documents. On the top lay a bold title, Factory Transfer Agreement. His lips curled into a smile. He had been secretly negotiating with investors from the city, men in polished shoes and sharp suits. They promised him money, power, and a higher position if he could deliver the factory into their hands. Of course, he had no legal right. But in his mind, what did that matter? He had ruled the factory for years. Workers feared him, obeyed him. To him, that was ownership enough. "By next month I'll be rich," he muttered, signing his initials on a page. And she... His eyes narrowed as he thought of Amara. She'll be gone, crawling in the dirt where she belongs. The next morning he summoned Amara into his office. She entered quietly, her hands still blackened with grease. "Sit." She didn't sit. She stood tall, though her body ached. The manager leaned back, swirling his whiskey. "From now on your pay is gone. 0. You will work for free, or you leave. Those are your choices." The words fell like stones. Outside, a few workers lingered by the door, listening, stifling their laughter. Amara's eyes narrowed. Her voice was calm, steady. "You would make someone work for nothing? Is that what you call leadership?" The manager slammed his glass down, shattering it. "Leadership? No. Power. And I have it. You don't. You're a worker, a nobody. If you don't like it, walk out. The factory won't even notice you're gone." For the first time, Amara allowed herself a faint smile. It unsettled him. "Why are you smiling?" he snapped. "What do you know?" Amara said nothing. Her silence was louder than any insult. The manager leaned closer, his breath hot with whiskey. "Listen carefully. You will never rise above me. This factory, this power, it's mine. And soon the world will know it." She turned and walked out without a word, her footsteps calm, deliberate. The manager clenched his fists. Something about her silence chilled him, though he didn't understand why. Outside, the workers whispered. "She's finished," one said. "The boss has crushed her." Another smirked. "She'll be gone by the end of the week." But Amara's silence wasn't defeat, it was strategy. She knew the storm was almost here. The manager called for a factory-wide meeting. Workers left their machines and gathered in the assembly hall, a wide, echoing space with rusted beams and peeling paint. The air buzzed with curiosity. At the front stood the manager, polished shoes gleaming, tie knotted perfectly, his chest puffed out like a man about to announce his coronation. He grabbed the microphone. His voice thundered through the hall. "Listen, all of you, for years I have carried this factory on my back. I have run it, led it, kept it alive while the rest of you merely worked. And now I take it to the next level. I have struck a deal with investors from the city. Tomorrow this factory will change hands. You will thank me for giving you a future." Applause broke out. Some workers cheered. Others looked at one another, uncertain but too afraid to question. At the back of the hall, Amara stood quietly, a folder in her hands. She waited until the noise died down. Then she stepped forward, each footstep echoing. The manager saw her and sneered. "You dare interrupt me? You of all people? Go back to your place." But Amara kept walking until she reached the front. She faced the crowd, her voice calm but strong. "You have all heard his claims. Now hear the truth." She opened the folder, pulling out the documents. The sound of paper crackling filled the silence. She raised it high for all to see. Here are the legal papers of ownership, registered, notarized, undeniable. And whose name is on them? Not his. Mine. Amara Johnson. The hall fell into stunned silence. Whispers erupted like wildfire. Her? She owns it? Impossible. But she's just a worker. The manager's face turned crimson. "Lies, forgery, she's a fraud." Amara's eyes locked on his. Her voice sharpened. "Lies have always been your weapon, but the truth is mine. I stayed silent because I wanted to prove something. That dignity is not given. It is earned. I endured your insults, your cuts, your cruelty. I worked beside these people so they could see I am one of them. But this factory, this home, belongs to me, and I take it back today." The manager lunged toward her, trying to snatch the papers, but several workers stepped between them for the first time. They blocked him, their faces hard. "She's telling the truth," one whispered. "Look at the documents." Another worker spoke louder, anger in his voice. "All these years, you treated us like dirt. And she suffered with us, worked with us. She's one of us. And you're nothing but a liar." The hall erupted, not in applause this time, but in shouts of anger. The manager stumbled back, realizing the tide had turned. His throne was gone. The next morning, the factory was reborn. Workers gathered again in the hall, but the air was different, lighter, hopeful. Amara stood at the front. No microphone, no polished shoes, just her work clothes, the same as theirs. Yet her presence filled the room. Her voice was steady, warm, commanding. "This factory will no longer be a prison. It will no longer feed on your sweat while giving you only scraps. From today, it is ours, a place of dignity, a place of fairness." She looked into the eyes of each worker. "You will be paid fairly. You will be respected. You will never again be shoved to the ground like I was, because no one deserves that." Tears welled in some eyes. Those who once laughed at her lowered their heads, ashamed. Amara raised her chin. I endured humiliation because I wanted to understand your pain. And now I will lead not as a master, but as one of you. Together we will build something stronger than steel. We will build dignity. Behind her, 2 guards led the manager out of the factory gates. His shouts echoed through the yard. This isn't over. You'll regret this. I'll take it back. But no one listened. For the first time, his voice carried no power. He was just noise fading into the distance. Amara turned back to her people. They tried to break me. They mocked my skin, my gender, my worth. But here I stand. A black woman, not just surviving, but leading. The machines roared back to life, louder than ever, but now their rhythm carried a new meaning. Not chains, not oppression, hope. And in every heart on that floor, a truth blazed bright. Amara was not just the owner, she was the embodiment of dignity itself.